Hi there. I was just watching the news and seeing Robert De Niro talking, and I thought it got me thinking. Let me just show you the clip. Probably the easiest way for us is just to show you on my iPad. Here we go, like this. This is
This
it.
is a tough time for verite, the truth. We're living in a time of big untruths, like Ukraine doesn't exist except as a part of Russia, like Trump won the 2020 election. And these big lies animate hundreds of thousands of smaller lies. This one can't remember, that one can't recall. These ones hide behind the Fifth Amendment, and these are government people, the Fifth Amendment. Usually characters I play hide behind the Fifth Amendment.
Well, it got me thinking, and I thought we might talk a little bit about truth. So De Niro there's talking all about big untruths, big lies and so forth. And if we're going to get to the root of these big lies, we really need to find out who are the big liars. You know, who is it that's doing the big lies? Okay, all the mugs out there follow along and believe the big lies. Okay, like I say, you can fool some of the people some of the time, and most of the people most of the time, but not all of the people all of the time, if I got that right, as Lincoln said. But who are telling these lies? Who's the big liars? I suppose it's the same throughout history. I mean, first of all, Hollywood's pretty good at lying. I mean, their whole job is surely to lie. That's what acting's all about. It's let's pretend, right? And then we put these people like De Niro, and I've got nothing against De Niro, I think he's a brilliant actor, etc. But we put these Hollywood stars up as being sort of icons who, for some reason, because they're good at playing let's pretend, can now get up there and preach to us about how the world should be. I mean, really, frankly, they are the last people we should be listening to, you know. And I think Hollywood's so got it wrong in so many things. I mean, they've been one of the big lies is I think wokeism, you know, all this woke nonsense, and this seems to be coming from all the lovies in Hollywood, isn't it? You know, and the lovies in the BBC, you know, and the ones that want to sort of dictate the news, you know. So they set up these agendas that are very far left liberalist type of agendas, to suggest to us that we should all be like this, you know, that the world is a different place now. But this is a minority of people being overrepresented. So the biggest liars are the TV producers, in my opinion, and the Hollywood producers, and the people, not necessarily De Niro, but the people like all those people in Hollywood who are the let's pretend world, you know, the tinsel behind the tinsel, you know. So that's false. That's a big lie, and I think the media is one of the worst liars of all, surely. And then of course there's the commercial interests that feed off the media, and in particular feed off YouTube and feed off Facebook and feed off Twitter and all the rest of it, because those people there, the people behind the commerce, haven't the slightest interest in whether people have a good life, if the world's a better world or not. There's absolutely zero compassion, zero conscience for these huge companies nowadays. You know, the companies such as here we had in the UK, we had Cadbury's, you know, that made special villages for its workers and all the rest of it. All been bought up, all been ruined, all just now we just sold junk chocolate, you know, and nothing, no interest for the workers, and so many other organisations exactly the same. The brands continue, but the actual the reality of what it is gone. You know, there's no more decency behind it. These companies now feed upon the lies that the media are spouting out. So, you know, for example, all the adverts, for example, following that wokeism thing, all the adverts overrepresent minorities, and to the point that you think, I'm a minority because I never see anybody like myself on screen. You know, it seems to be all minority groups, and they've become overrepresented. And some of my friends from different minorities say, "What's going on, Craig? You know, we're beginning to wonder with all this too. You know, because this is not the way the world's made." And also, so we get this commercialism that's absolutely destroying our 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 world in many respects. Our sense of being able to get any balance. You know, there's no common sense out there anymore. It's all the agendas are being pushed by, first of all, the people in the media, then all the commercial interests going on there, and then of course we start getting these politically correct people in the background too that are feeding into all this worldwide too. I don't know what you guys think. I'm probably talking out of turn here. I'm probably going to get flamed by you all, but you know, I'm only speaking what I see, and I think this is one of the, you know, I'm only a sort of psychic having a chat with you, but I see this as something that is pushing the world in the wrong direction, into a world where truth is getting completely lost, because basic truth, basic common sense is getting lost. Like all this gender fluidity. You know, I don't know what you think about that, but, you know, I mean, all the kids in the school here in the UK, and I've heard it happening in Australia too, and happening in America, where there's this sort of gender fluidity. You know, I'm maybe male, maybe I'm female, maybe I'm in between, you know. It's very easy. You know, common sense can be applied to this. You know, just look between your legs. You'll find out. You know, you'll be able to see. You'll be able to tell. So I do think that we, you know, I am being a bit facetious here, obviously, but at the same time, I think we do need to get a bit more balance, because the agendas are being pushed by people in the background. In this case, I think there's an awful lot of political ideas being fed into schools that are disrupting kids at an age when they really don't know what they're going through. Their minds are sort of uncertain about who they are, and they're just becoming adults, and we're getting a lot of nonsense put into them, and it's become the latest school craze to go off in all these wacky directions. And then who else is the big liars? Well, the church, of course, is one of the best. I mean, they've had many, many years of practicing at lying and distorting the truth. I mean, what we see in Christianity, for example, has nothing to do with Jesus, in my opinion. They're going to get banned here. But no, yes. But think about it, though. The church has been really covered up a lot of stuff, hasn't it? We've seen all this awful stuff being shown on the media about you know, kids being abused and things like that by the church, you know. So who can we turn to? We can't turn to the church, you know, or we can't turn to any of the religious organisations, because it's not just the Christian church. We see it in all the religious organisations everywhere. We see people in power, a small number of people pushing public opinion, pushing the big lies. So I think if we're going to get to what are these big lies and where they're coming from, we've got to think about who are the big liars, you know. And I think it's quite self-evident, really. The things I've described are probably where the problems are coming from. I know that people like to watch these type of channels that I have. They immediately jump onto conspiracy theories of some sort, that there's some hidden agenda, some hidden intelligentsia behind it all that's been organising this for years. No, I think they're all in plain sight, frankly. I think the people that are causing the problems are the people who who got the power, but also got ideas that's pushing their personal agenda. Nobody is particularly interested in the good of the whole, are they? Nobody's really interested in that everybody is having a decent society. I mean, environment's another where the big lie comes. You know, we've got to have more homes, we've got to build more and more, and so therefore we've got to build homes on the green belt here in the UK. And I'm seeing, for example, all around us here in the UK and in my area in the south of England, huge great developments being put on beautiful little villages and beautiful idyllic places that can never ever be replaced, that have been there for centuries, being just built over with solid wrong houses in the wrong places. And we're told we've got to have this, you know. And meanwhile, there's areas of the country in the UK, places in London that are run down, places in some of the old industrial towns of Britain that are run down, that need that money, need the development. You know, why not build in Liverpool? Why not build in Bradford? Why not build and all that, redevelop all those town centres? No, because it's too expensive. It's cheaper to build houses on green belt and tear the places down and call it, Sunny Oaks or such and such meadows, because it's cheaper. Because the agenda, again, is being driven by big liars, commercial interests. And the rest of us mugs have to go along it. We're, like De Niro said, the little lies, all the little lies that come along that we feed off and think this, that, and we run off on our theories of this and theories of that, of why it's all happening. But really, I think they're all in plain sight, And it's exactly the same when we look at what's going on with Ukraine, for example, at the moment. De Niro picked up on that, didn't he? You can't call a country Ukraine doesn't exist. It's always been part of Russia. Okay, they focus on that now. But what about Tibet? Tibet has always been part of China. No. Israel. Has Palestine always been part of Israel, or has Israel always been part of Palestine? Where does it end? It's always to most of us when we look at it. I mean, it's all pretty self-evident when the lies are being told, when the fakery is being said, and it all depends on who's pulling the strings of the agenda, doesn't it? And I think it's the politicians, it's the big money, and perhaps the church, and perhaps worst of all, the media, in my opinion. Thank God we've got a bit of YouTube now, because there does kind of still be a little bit of a nudge where a few people can voice things and give ideas. Anyway, I suppose I'm just going off on a little bit of a rant, and this isn't very particularly psychic today. But I think about the future of the world a lot, obviously, not just because I make my predictions and things on here. And by the way, thank you to some of those channels out there that have been featuring a lot of my work as a psychic and talking about me. I've been amazed. I did a search on myself recently and didn't realise so many people were talking about this channel. But, I'm obviously interested in the future, and I care about the future of the world, don't you? I mean, do you care about the future of the world? And shouldn't we all be thinking this way? I mean, how many years have I'm getting towards the latter part of my life now, so do I care? Let the kids sort it out, No, we've got to make a decent world for future generations. And this, I think, is where we really have to start to look to what really is truth. We're in a society full of materialistic lies. One of the biggest lies, I think, is science, because science sees everything. The big lie is that the material world is the only thing, and everything we do has got to be function of the material world. The human spirit does not exist except some function of the brain. But no, those that experiment with mysticism and dive deep into it will see that the brain is actually just the recipient of the human spirit. And we will come back to this place once again if we understand the idea of reincarnation, which I think one day will be proven. And this material world that we're messing up would have to be cleaned up by us in the future, not our future generations, because we will live here again. Anyway, I'm ranting today, hopefully putting a little bit of a spiritual dimension on these things. So what do you think, guys? Do you think De Niro's got it right there? I mean, some of the things he says, I can see what he's trying to say. I've probably distorted it a bit, but who are the big liars? Who are the big liars out there? We see it also in the individuals. We see it in my profession. I see terrible liars work as psychics sometimes. There's who cares about the truth nowadays? Anyway, I'd be grateful if you put your comments and let's discuss this. Okay, well, I hope you've enjoyed my little rant there. So I'll take some other questions as well, if you like, actually, guys, now. So we can talk about other issues as well surrounding some of these type of things. Ideas you've had. I've been trying to click on some of your comments as I've been talking and so forth. I mean, but truth does seem to be one of those things that seems to have been lost, hasn't it, for us all? I mean, we seem to have. They talk about, don't they, the spirit of the age. And what is the spirit of our age? It seems to be an extremely immature childish sort of mentality that dominates the world at the moment, which I think in many ways doesn't Hollywood kind of emphasizes and kind of uh, epitomizes, I think is the word I want to say. Let's have a look at a few more of your comments. Yeah, well, generally used. you seem to like what I say, guys. I worry I sometimes get a bit carried away, and I don't always sort of. I move away from. Obviously, I'm a psychic, talking about psychic things, but I think all these things are about what sort of future are we making for ourselves now. Okay, I see other questions coming up. This one comes up all the time, doesn't it? Biden or Trump will be president in 2024. I just think actually Biden again is another one that kind of today he seems to represent the way the world is in many ways, isn't he? He's completely fallen asleep. I mean, I watched some of the Australian type of newsreels from Sky recently, Sky Australia, which I think is brilliant. And the shots of Biden, they seem to be laughing at him there, falling down the aeroplane stairs, getting everything he's got to present seems to be wrong. I'm sure he's an, he doesn't, he appears to be a nice enough guy, but whether he is or he isn't, he just seems to be half asleep all the time. Sleepy Joe Biden, bungling Biden or bumbling Biden, I think is what I would call him, because he's like a bumbling old man, and that has got to be worrying, hasn't it? Really, in a world that is full of so much crisis at the moment. I've already made my predictions about what I think is going to happen for the midterms for the American, and I've said that I see the Republicans and I see taking both houses, and I see also. I said right back then. I said I saw a black woman being president, and not necessarily Kamala Harris. And this may be a temporary thing, but I think ultimately, I think Trump's going to have another shot at it. And I think when he has a shot at it, I think people are going to have to say, it's a choice between cholera and plague, like they're saying, and I think people would choose. I think people are going to choose Trump again, actually. But then I did get it wrong before, unless I was getting it right in 2020. Let's have a look at some of your other comments here. But back to the old woke thing. The generation has grown up on social media, and don't you think that's one of the problems? And don't you think also that we really have to start doing something about social media? Because one of the things I think is really important for the world, actually, Julie, there is history. Because nobody learns history nowadays. In fact, nobody learns facts nowadays. Nobody learns knowledge nowadays when you think about it, because everything's so easily accessible through the internet. You get your news through Facebook and YouTube, and that's going to be distorted. You get your information through Wikipedia, which is a complete, it's dry. It's not real knowledge. And everything you do in the exams as kids is all tick box. So nobody writes essays and nobody learns about history. And our history has been totally distorted, again, by the media, isn't it? Isn't it the media that always go in and sort of always kind of change history a little bit? If we got anything, we change the whole agenda for history, and it don't look anything like I learned at school, and it don't look anything like the photographs from those periods and things. Even going back 140 years, it's changed beyond recognition. So I think that's dangerous, because if we lose track of history and we don't learn from history, we are on very rocky seas, because goodness knows what could happen if we don't pay attention to that. I see, yes, Candace Owens. I see you're talking about the Biden thing. That's who I was. I didn't initially know anything about Candace Owens, actually, and then the people that were coming in on those predictions were saying, "Oh, this seems like Candace Owens." And now I look at Candace Owens, I think that does seem to be what I was sensing before. So whether she can do it or not, or whether she's able to be president. I don't know. I don't know quite what her status would be. I don't know enough about politics, although I talk about it enough. Sorry. So perhaps I'm the blind leading the blind here. Yeah. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? I mean, Facebook particularly needs to be brought to book, I think. I'm hopeful that Twitter's going to, well, whether we can trust Elon Musk, but often it takes an individual to change things. I always think another thing we have wrong with the world, and I think this is something where we really need to rethink things, is you cannot run things by committees. If you get groups of people running things, whether that be board of a company or it be the organizers of a TV station or it be a religious committee, you will always end up with the lowest possible denominator. It'll always end up with grey. You need leadership. And like him or not, Musk could be someone that could change if he can get enough leadership with buying as much as he has into it. You might get, even though he might not be quite right with things, and there's a pretty odd sort of character. But the thing is, you do need leadership. This is where we get the problems, when you start getting people trying to organize things behind the scenes. These, perhaps, are the biggest liars that I was talking about. Here we go with another. So that's fair enough, because, I've obviously said a lot of things about Trump. I actually, some of you think he's a dangerous clown. What do you think? Put your comments below, because I think one of the things you could say about people like Trump and some of the other leaders, and this is always a problem because it's a mixed blessing, is that they do what they say, and that they do try to take the personal leadership, and so much of that comes a lot of the time from ego. But we do kind of need leadership, because too many people nowadays are just falling into this trap of all following the crowd, as it were. We've become sheep, haven't we? On all levels, we've become like sheep. Because this is particularly, again, I think, social media where it goes wrong, where everybody wants to be liked, wants to be popular, wants lots of thumbs up on Facebook, and wants lots of good comments on YouTube, and it's become everybody. It's become endemic, and nobody's prepared actually to take the slack. Nobody sticks their neck above the parapets like I kind of tend to do, and some others. We have to stick our neck out, and sometimes we can get in a lot of trouble with it. Particularly, we voice unpopular opinions. But you have to speak up. And this is where I think people have lost their way. And I worry for the future with this, because, when you look at H.G. Wells, how he thought about the future. He in The Time Machine, ages ago, he wrote that, Victorian times, wasn't it? He saw humanity at that point, the nature of industrial society, develop their going into a spoilt upper class, a bit like Hollywood, and who live above ground, and a sort of an ape-like group that became the workers underground. That was his vision of a dystopia that grew out of Victorian society. How would it go in our society, though, where we have all these mindless people endlessly consuming stuff on the internet, but never actually learning anything, never growing wise, and another group of people like to control them? Make a good sci-fi, wouldn't it? So you've just described the world, especially the Western world, as I see it. The lunatics are in charge of the asylum, but I believe everything goes in cycles and it will change. Yeah, except that is very true. And that's particularly what we learn from history again, isn't it? But except we do kind of be in a very unusual situation now, because never before in human history has technology been around like it has. And it's as if now technology doesn't just look after the production of our goods and things, but technology has taken over our psychologies. The first thing you do in the morning for many people is have a look at your phone, see what messages you got, have a look on Facebook and all the rest of it. The last thing you do at night, I'm a victim too. Look at Facebook, look at the messages you got, approve a few comments on YouTube or so forth, or delete a few, that type of thing. I mean, we're all hooked into this unusual world, and it's getting worse, because The danger for the future, of course, is it's becoming more and more immersive. We're getting all this now, the cyber artificial 3D worlds that you can, with the glasses and things that you can do. And you know, Google Glasses was a thing. I mean, you take it everywhere with you. That sort of thing's going to get worse. And we can implant it into the brain somehow where we don't need to learn anything, do we? We can just plug into some chip that will tell us how to fly an airplane or so forth, like you've seen in some of the sci-fi movies. I mean, these things are becoming a reality. And are we going to see the human condition become like it was in H.G. Wells, where you become almost the people who lived above ground were almost like children? Or are we going to see a development of human consciousness? And I think we do have to have a cycle in the end. And it often takes major problems to wake everybody up. And it hasn't done it yet, has it? We've had COVID. Everybody's still fast asleep subconsciously. We've had a Ukraine, which is a big threat to the world. Everybody's still fast asleep. You know, we're probably going to get a lot more, particularly environmental things. And are we going to wake up? And I think that's essential, because this existence we live in here, we think, like I said about science earlier on, we think of it all as a material thing, a material world, and we're all lost in that. But this place, this where we are, is a place in the universe. You think what the universe is like, and this whole universe is here really supporting ultimately life, and life supports consciousness, or is the conduit for consciousness. It doesn't necessarily generate consciousness, but the reason we are all here surely is so that we can become conscious human beings, and ultimately superhuman beings in a way, you know, as we move into other dimensions and so forth. So we've got to look at the bigger picture of things, and hopefully the evolution of us all will ultimately lead to something a lot more spiritual. I think spiritual is an odd word, but something that will lead us ultimately to a higher level of understanding. I think we will. I think the answer at the end is going to be good. I think at the end of the day, we will find a better world, a better way. Anyway, I'm going to finish now because I don't want to make these videos too long, but I thank all of you that have joined me today. And if you're new to the channel, do please subscribe. If you've got any comments about this, obviously that's fantastic. Let's have your comments. It'll all stimulate new videos. And I do occasionally, of course, go live like this, just to share ideas. And don't forget, on Saturdays, Jane and myself always do our Craig and Jane show. Okay, well, thank you for joining me. See you soon, folks. Gonna say bye. Bye for now.
Craig and Jane Hamilton Parker are the world's most psychic couple. Can they speak to the dead and bring messages of hope in these troubled times? Join them for an evening of mystical talks.
Whoops, wrong ad. Here we go.
She's talking about somewhere that gives me a name that sounds like Herbrook.
She's from Pembrokeshire.
Pembrokeshire. Okay. That's
and her name was Jean.
She's talking about a Peter. Something to do with fish and chips? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If I was still here, I'd clip him round the ear. Would you understand that? All right. Okay. I feel he's bringing you flowers from the spirit world, because I feel very much you sense him at times, because I'm getting out of breath as he's coming through. Would you understand that? Very breathless.